So it's just a website, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So, want me to try to figure it out?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Hey man, that's the wrong kind of switch.
Why? Oh.
Yeah, you should have a network switch.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, what's up?
Baking pie.
Nice to finally meet
Yeah.
you. You're on stream. Go.
Oh, right
Go
here.
and say
Come
hi.
on.
It's the baking
Hi,
pie, guys. Very nice to finally meet you. Yeah. I'm running.
Hello, everyone! Hey! That actually worked. Cool. Hello. So, my name is Cassidy Williams, and I'm one of the directors of Keys, and we are putting on this event. Welcome to the Seattle Mechanical Keyboard Meetup. Thank you so much for coming. So we are just going to get right into our first talk. Our first speaker is Isabel. She is going to be speaking on the anatomy of a mechanical keyboard, and then we'll do Q&A afterwards. And so if you have parts that make a mechanical keyboard, and then we're going to talk about how you can find these parts and build your own board. This is a mechanical switch. We love them. They're made of actual moving pieces, not just a piece of rubber. And this switch is soldered directly onto the circuit board of the keyboard. So the way this works is the bit that's highlighted on the left is called a leaf spring. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but the next slide will have better illustrations. And basically it's like this upside down U shape made out of metal. And it has this little gap between the legs. And when those little legs touch, then the circuit is completed and the signal is sent to the computer. The middle part that's highlighted is called the slider. So you can see like the switch being deconstructed here. The slider sits on top of the spring, and the spring eventually gets compressed down, and that's what makes the slider move down. So here is the grate. So this part that's highlighted, that's the leaf spring. So you can see that when you press down on the switch, the little slider moves down, and that little leg that kind of sticks out of the slider just like pushes the leaf spring, and that's what makes it close. So one of the first things that you can customize about your switch is how much force you need to put on the switch in order for the signal to be sent to your computer. And so since you need to compress the spring enough to have the little leg hit the leaf spring, if you get a switch if you get a spring that's really heavy and hard to compress, that makes a category of switches called heavy switches. And the same thing for light switches. If you want something that's just like, you barely have to press your switch in order for it to activate, which is what a lot of people in gaming stuff use, then light switches are what you're looking for. Finally, switches fall into 3 separate categories. So we have tactile, clicky, and linear. tactile, like super smooth, like you have the bump that you feel when you press down on it, but it's not loud, you don't really hear any sound. It's great if you care about your coworkers' feelings. Clicky switches, it's in the middle. You can see that there's like this separate little white piece of the slider. It like isn't connected to the stem. And so when you press down on it, that slider will hit the bottom of the switch, and that's what makes the loud clicky sound. So that's what I personally use at work, and my coworkers kind of make me like it's fine. And then linear switches, it's smooth all the way up and down. You don't feel anything, you don't hear anything. And again, like people who do gaming usually use linear switches. And so this is the little middle bit that I was talking about before. The slider hits the very bottom of the switch housing, and that's what makes the clicking sound. So we actually have a switch modding booth today. We had one last year too. And this is where you, like, there's a bunch of bags of switches, and you can just like take them apart, and just for funsies. And so if you do that today, you'll be able to tell what type of switch you have just by looking at the slider. So if the slider, I know the sky looks kind of blue, this is a black switch, I promise. If you look at the little leg on this slider, you can see that it's completely smooth. And so that's how you can tell that this is a linear switch, because there's no bump for that leaf spring to hit. And then kind of similarly here, we see like a tiny little bump on the leg of this slider, and so that means that it's tactile, not necessarily clicky unless that slider bit is not connected to the main stem. So there's a few different types of stems. So you can see here, like this little, in the left picture, there's like that square. So that's like the very top of the slider, which is connected to the stem. And so this is just important to keep in mind when you're looking to buy keycaps, because not every keycap fits every switch. So these are the three like most popular types of stems: MX, Alps, and toe break. So it's just something to keep in mind. So now that we know all about how switches work, we can get to the fun part of building a keyboard. So first, in order to like even have the keyboard, we need a circuit board. This is what's going to send like, all of the information from the keyboard to your computer. So this is the PCB. It's a printed circuit board. It's pretty much what every keyboard, mechanical keyboard uses. And so you can see here highlighted, that's where like one individual switch would sit in your PCB. And basically what happens is, which we'll see in later pictures, you pop the switch in there, and there's like these little metal legs that stick out of the bottom of the switch, and it pokes through the other side of the PCB, and you just like need to solder those on. Before deciding what kind of PCB to buy, there are so many more decisions to make. First is the size of your keyboard. So this is like very generic picture that shows 60% boards don't have a function row, don't have arrow keys or anything like that. You can move up to 80%, which includes those things, and you can move up to 100%, which includes your numpad. There's also super tiny keyboards and super massive keyboards, and some crazy weird like designs and patterns. So the expo is a great chance to kind of like see what's out there and like be very overwhelmed by it, and then ask me questions. Another thing to keep in mind is that you want to decide if you want your board to have like LEDs, because if you do, you're going to want to either find a PCB that comes with LEDs already on it or supports you soldering your own LEDs. Also decide to get LEDs, you want to make sure that your switch supports them. Not all switches have like the transparent part of their casing, and if they don't, then you're just not going to get any light coming through. These are pictures of some cool layouts. These are my boards except for the ergo, because I don't like being frustrated when I type. The most important thing probably when choosing your PCB is deciding how much you want to be able to customize keystrokes. So I'm a big fan of having custom macros that like open up my terminal window and like automatically type in some weird code snippet that I want. And so to do that, you want to get a PCB that supports, these are some of the most common customizable like pieces of firmware. They're all open source. If you don't get a board that supports these types of firmwares, like Vortex boards, they're great keyboards, but you have to like do actual keystrokes on the board itself to like program it, and that's just kind of like the whole concept of programming keyboards is based on layers. So you can set yourself to either be permanently or temporarily on a certain layer. So like if we were on layer 2 and we press a key on our keyboard, the firmware would first like look at layer 2 and say, oh, is there any value assigned to this key? And if there's not, it'll go down to the next layer below. So it'll go down to layer 1 and then to layer 0 until it eventually finds a value assigned to that press. So this is an example of what a QMK like key map could look like. So you have, this is from my Prionic. You can have your map above that has like your QWERTY, your like, standard modifiers, and that's what like the code for the map is. So then let's say that we wanted to add a numpad layer. But we have no keys because we decided to buy a really tiny keyboard because we're very smart. So what we do is we create a new layer, and we'll just call it a numpad layer. And you can see that on the left, there's like all the different numbers, the different like plus, minus, whatever, and then on the right, everything is dashed out. So there's no values assigned to those keys in the numpad layer. So then if you look at the actual like map that it created above, you see the numpad on the left, and you see the QWERTY layer kind of like coming through underneath. Super easy stuff, right? Makes total sense. So once we have a PCB, then we need to get a plate that fits it. So the plate is usually this like metal piece that sits on top of the PCB just to like protect it and like help you align the switches as you solder them in. So this is what it looked like when I was building my Prionic. You can kind of see the sections that I have outlined before of where each switch sits, and so I just kind of pop the plate on top of the PCB. I start putting switches on the 4 corners just to kind of hold them together, and then from there, I just start filling in all of my switches. And once you have all that filled in, just flip it upside down, and you have to solder all of those tiny little legs, and it takes a long time. And then from there, you can get yourself a case. And this is where you can like really start making like the aesthetic of the board together. It's like for now the switches, like yeah, it feels good, but no one knows you have a fancy board until like they look really nice. So cases can be made out of anything. They just have to fit the size of your PCB, and of course like make sure that the like slot for your USB connection is lined up, like all of that. But most popular materials are like aluminum, wood, plastic. Cassidy is a big fan of just laser cutting and 3D printing her own stuff, so that's what she does, and she's very cool. But you can like make them out of Legos. You can pretty much do whatever you want for a case. And then you can add even more aesthetic to your board, and this is my favorite part. There's tons of different like keycap sets that you can get, and they have all sorts of different colors and profiles and legends. These are just like quick diagrams. This doesn't cover all of the shapes and the profiles for keycaps, but you can see like SA on the top left, personal favorite. They're like super thick, super tall. You feel really like sturdy when you type on them. And then you can kind of see like DSA is pretty uniform all the way across. Those were really nice, like for people who use ortholinear boards for stenography. It keeps everything kind of on the same plane. And then keycaps can also be made from different materials. And then we also have like a little artisan category that like I'm sure you'll see tons of fancy looking like resin caps when you walk through that expo. But ABS and PBT are the most popular plastics used for keycaps. PBT is considered a little bit more high quality because it isn't yellow, it doesn't shine when you're fingers, but you get different colorways that are available in each type of plastic, so you can get high quality caps from. Another big thing that makes a difference in the quality of your keycaps is how the legends are printed on them. So you can see the number 9 key, there's nothing on the bottom. So what they do is they just literally print the number 9 on this keycap. And as you can probably imagine, like with enough use, that legend could wear off. It's just on the surface level. But with the blue and the green keycap here, the legends are done through a process called double shot. And so you can kind of see on the bottom diagram, you have the layer of plastic that has the legend, and then the actual color of the keycap is kind of filled in around it. So you pretty much can't wear out that legend, and it's considered very durable. Before you go out and spend hundreds of dollars on the keycap set, multiple times, make sure that you're getting keycaps that will fit your board. As you can see from these two diagrams, the space bars of these two keyboards are different sizes. The mods, the blue keys on the bottom row next to the space bar are different sizes. Everything is based off alpha keys, so alpha keys are considered one unit. Just one by one, they're squared, super easy. So when you see something like 1.5, that means that this key is 1.5 times the size of your standard alpha key. So don't make the mistake that I have made of not having the right keys for your keyboard. And again, kind of what we talked about before, you want to make sure that the keycaps that you buy match the stems of your switches. And so this is what the stems for these keycaps look like for Alps, MX, and Moreira, just so that you can visually quickly tell if they're going to fit your board. So from there, you're like, now what? I know way too much about keyboards, but I want to buy one. How does it work? You can't just go to Amazon. I've had so many people be like, hey, can't find this keyboard on Amazon, where'd you get it? So I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. I don't get paid by them. I'm my own person. These are my opinions. But this is a great list that I've kind of compiled through my time of just being way too involved in this hobby. We usually do things called group buys, which is a lot of times run by a mass shop, or you'll see different threads on the subreddit for mechanical keyboards, and that's just you commit to buying something and you wait for 6 months or a year, and then eventually you get it in the mail and you're like, wow, thanks past me, this was a great decision. But there's a bunch of other places that you can get things delivered to you in a much shorter time than that. But a lot of the things in this hobby are more limited runs, you just have to jump at the chance, or go to Met Market and buy it from someone who has probably too many keyboards too. So I think, Cassidy, let's get some questions going. I'm sure people are just burning it. Yay! Thanks, Mashdrop.
So we can get straight into questions. Was there a Slido link or something that you had as well? So check this out as soon as it actually shows up. If you would like to ask questions, not by raising your hand, I get it, introverts exist. You can stick them in there, and then we can read the questions. I'll have them sent directly to my phone if you want to go there, or you can start screaming and I'll point at you. Don't scream. But anyway, my first question is, Isabella, what is your favorite keyboard?
This isn't rehearsed. My favorite keyboard is all of them. I love them all equally, like I love my dog. And if I had multiple dogs, I love them all equally too.
And what if one's a brat? We'll get there later. Okay, so let's see. You have a question. What is your opinion on roper? Fancy rubber dome or god tier switch?
Oh, Tobre.
Tobre. Got it.
I was in Singapore recently, And so I was like, oh, I might as well buy a Leopold with some toe brace on it because why not? I'm in Singapore. I like it. Like my biggest qualm with it is that I don't get to like have as much variety of keycaps. But I think they feel nice. Please don't move me off the stage. My favorite switch. I like heavy switches that make my fingers hurt after using them. I'm probably like box navies.
Those are good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty standard.
I feel like we're kind of awkward standing here. Let's like do a pose. Hey,
What's up?
someone asked, where can you get good resin keycaps?
You can get them from awesome artisans. I think usually you can find them like through just the mechanical keyboard subreddit. There will be tons of like interest checks and group buys that go out on there. But if you know the name of an independent artist, like Tiny, she has a website where she sells them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She's pretty good. Tiny. Check her. It's just like that's her
Tiny
handle
makes
on
things.
Tiny makes things. I don't like this position. It's just okay.
He's a good grandma.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite keyboard layout?
So hard.
Are you an ortholinear gal or?
I prefer staggered layouts. I usually do 60 to 65% is a nice sweet spot. But I do have a couple ortholinear boards because they make me feel old when I use them.
Yeah, everybody's just like, hey, let me type on your board. Oh no.
Where are all your keys?
Help me. A lot of people are asking, we've had multiple questions about GMK header bite. Do you
I just plead with
Okay,
it.
lots of people say, no, don't answer that.
I'll just plead with it.
Yeah.
Gotta keep the fans happy.
Let's
My knee hurts.
let's change positions. Okay. So,
This is better.
yeah, I like this. This is nice and cozy. You mentioned all of those different layers and stuff. How do you remember the different layouts between them, especially if you're switching between boards that you have?
It's so hard. I'll usually stick with a board for a few months just so like my brain doesn't go crazy. But I have a pretty standard layout that I flash for each board. So I'll have like, oh, on my like layer 2, I have all of my like programming weird shortcuts. On layer 3, I have these other macros. But I try to keep it pretty consistent. The biggest problem is when I switch between staggered and ortholinear because it's so hard, guys.
That's actually, that's the same way I do it too, where if I'm programming different macros and stuff, I always have like function M mutes my computer, and then different things like that.
Fancy.
So fancy, yeah. So do you hail from Geek Hack Desk Authority or Reddit mechanical keyboards?
Well, really neither. I just really post a lot on Twitter. But once upon a time, a few weeks ago, my tweet went viral and it got posted on Reddit, on the mechanical keyboard subreddit. So I think you guys can find me through there now.
Yeah.
I have no privacy.
Have you tried or used split keyboards? What do you think about those?
So I never really learned how to type properly when I was a kid. So like my hands cross over and like do all the wrong things. So they're really bad for me because I don't want to learn how to type. But I've tried them like a few different people's boards and they're cool, but I feel like I would just not be productive at all.
What about like the Dvorak and those funky layouts? Have you tried those?
I have a friend who keeps telling me to do it, and he says that it's like really good for his hands, so he doesn't get carpal tunnel. Whatever. Maybe one day when like I don't have a lot of work to do, that I can actually be very unproductive for a few months.
And just figure it out. If your keycaps are compatible with the Switch, do you mix custom keys that don't match the same row?
I definitely have a vomit board that I made from one of the grab bags that is just a nightmare to type on. But I can't have the different rows. It's too much.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan of sculpted keys.
Yeah, I really like that shape too. It feels like I'm, I don't know, scooping ice cream or something while typing. Let's change positions again. Okay. Anyway, so How long did it take you to build your first board?
So the actual building of the board part didn't take very long. I had very minimum soldering skills to begin with.
I want to stand up again. This is a good joke. Okay.
I had very minimum soldering skills, so I didn't burn the house down, but it took me a while to figure out, like, oh, these are the parts that I can kind of buy that go together. And so that was, I think, what took the longest.
Is there any danger of completely destroying everything if you're not good at soldering?
I mean, probably. I'm very bad at hardware, so I don't really know, but I know that Tyler, who's volunteering today, has messed up a few PCBs in his day.
Oh, he has messed up hard. Shame. But anyway, so moving on. What's your favorite keycap set?
Well, I think it changes from time to time, but I recently splurged on some of the Dev TTY, the Triumph mods, because I'm a big sucker for that color, and I just love the deep dish.
Yeah, it's kind of like all of them are homing keys.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, it's great. Which is not helpful for homing, but
But the homing is even deeper.
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I gotta try it. Cool. What are your thoughts on the classic IBM keyboards, like the Model M's and stuff?
Yes. I would love to buy one.
Yeah, they're
It's,
so good.
it's like, it's the end goal, right?
A friend of mine, he set up an eBay alert for his birthday, and so he got an IBM Model N keyboard that was made on the day he was born, and that's the keyboard that he uses for everything.
That's commitment.
Yeah. This is like an informational question. Does the clicky part on a switch have a function besides making sound?
No, it's just to be loud and obnoxious.
Is Bluetooth an option?
Yeah, so you can get boards with Bluetooth on them. They're definitely less common, and I think the biggest concern in the community is that they're like wired is just a lot more stable, a lot less room for like things breaking and failing over time. But there's definitely some solid options for Bluetooth keyboards.
Yeah, I know Varmillo does some, and there's some kits and stuff out there. I like cords because I'm lazy about charging.
You can also spend a lot of money on pretty cords.
That's true. That's a whole other world.
I think I spent like $30 plus shipping on a fancy cord from Germany, so
Hey,
it was a cheap one.
speaking of, what is the most money spent on a keyboard?
So I just recently bought that Triumph set. It was probably like $150 because I bought it aftermarket, and yeah, that one hurt. But when I was first starting out, I was telling Cassidy, I was like, I want to buy a mechanical keyboard, but I don't want to spend more than $100.
And I laughed.
But for a board itself, maybe 200. Yeah, I feel like I'm not a big spender. There's definitely people that have spent way more than I have.
Yeah, I know plenty of people who just have like their $30 Magic Force keyboard and they love it, and that's good.
You don't have to buy a super expensive board to like have a nice mechanical.
Yeah, and then I know some people in the room have spent $1,000 on their boards. So the world is your oyster. Watch out. Do you have any artists and keycaps, by the way?
I have a few that I've gotten as giveaways. I already spent so much money on keyboards that it's hard for me to personally spend that much on one single key. Artists deserve the full price that they are charging for their artisans. It's just, I would rather get more keyboards.
There's a support group for this later today. There's an etiquette question. So using very clicky keyboards in public makes them nervous. Is there etiquette around that?
I feel like it's kind of the same thing, like you wouldn't use your phone on speakerphone when you're out in public, just like be respectful of other people. Maybe, this is a great opportunity for you to buy multiple keyboards with like different types of switches. And that way you have one for every occasion.
You gotta. I actually did bring a mechanical keyboard to the library once, and it was fine. It wasn't one of my loud ones, but I took a picture and tweeted it, and I was like, look how cool I am. And I got
People rip you apart.
Yeah, people were so mad because they were just like, you don't respect libraries. But
You
then
don't even know that you buy a keyboard.
a librarian ended up tweeting saying, hey, we want everybody in the the library, even if you have a loud keyboard. So bring it on down. So the library metal need all
The
of us.
library industry building.
Bring it. So John heard that there are boards where you can pop in switches rather than solder. What's the deal?
What is the deal with these? So these are called hot swappable switches, keyboards, and basically like there's a special tool that you use. It's kind of like a keycap puller but for switches, and you can just pop them off, put new ones on. You never have to solder them. That's what I did with my match drop all because I'm lazy. But I think those like people say that you really shouldn't be changing your switches all the time. It's
Yeah,
kinda
I think it can like strip something if you're just swapping them constantly. But when you're setting up a board, I have one hot swappable board, and man,
So
it was
easy.
life changing because I'm used to spending so much time soldering and stuff, and being able to just pop it in,
Game
that was
changer.
nice. Speaking of game changers, what do people even mean by the end game besides Avengers, of course?
The end game is just this myth that once, if I could just get this one board, if I could just get this one key set, then I wouldn't buy anything else. And that's a
I
lie.
can finally be happy.
You just tell yourself that to like make yourself feel better about spending way too much money. Yeah,
Yeah, one time I said I reached endgame in 2016.
and here we are.
Here we are, so many boards later, literally like 12 boards later. What do you set up to help you as a software dev?
So I have a bunch of different macros on my board for like debugging, for like, I just have a one key press to like pop my terminal in. Instead of doing like terminal aliases, I usually just have them in a separate layer so I can use them anywhere, not just like on that specific computer that I'm on. I'm not super fancy. I know people do like I'll program like this key to just put a skeleton up like an if-else statement.
Right, and like
And-
React components.
Yeah, I feel like that's cool.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
I use Vim when I code, and so I have like some extra layers in my keyboard for both programming in Vim and just doing keyboard things in it, and that's pretty fun. Along the same lines, what's a cool project that one can work on programming a 20 keyboard? So like a numpad of some kind. There's a few different projects you can do.
Yeah.
I know there's one gal who I don't think is at the meetup today. Oh, she's not. Anyway, she has a streaming setup where she live streams her hardware and software projects, and she programmed a macro pad to just be like, hey, if I click this key, it'll pull up this screen. If I pull up this key, it'll pull up this screen. This will run the project that I'm currently doing, and that's how she programmed it.
Yeah, I think like they're really good for very niche scenarios like that.
Yeah, I know one guy who's also a video editor, and he just put in a bunch of his very regularly used commands for video editing and
I would say for like photo editing and stuff like
yeah,
that.
the world is your oyster.
Truly.
What do you think about true gasket keyboards?
I don't think I know what those are. Can you educate me?
I don't know either.
We're posers.
Oh no! You have to escape. Get it? That's a key on a keyboard.
I think I just need some space, honestly.
Come on, we're getting out of control here. Let's shift subjects. We're starting to get like, so what are your thoughts on hand wiring keyboards? For those who don't know what it is.
So basically, I guess it's like instead of using a PCB, you just put wires together. And personally, that seems really scary. I don't know a whole lot about hardware, and I don't trust myself to do it. But it's super cool. Like,
Fun
you can do
fact,
it.
C-Keys runs hand wiring workshops, and you can sign up.
Tomorrow afternoon, right?
There's some tomorrow. Tomorrow, we actually have PCBs that Brendan put together. You can see some of the projects in the back. But yeah, it's you get a Pro Micro or a Proton C or different things, and you just put wires on the switches and connect them to this little board, and then program it. And I have done it once.
Sounds terrible.
It was terrifying. I messed up very badly. But hey, it was fun in the end once things finally started to work. And there are some people who are here at the meetup who have some of the most gloriously hand-wired keyboards ever, where they don't use PCBs at all on any of their boards. They just hand-wire everything. And you'll see them when we kind of do the showcase. It's worth checking out. it is a level of patience and bravery that I don't have, but I
I
respect.
feel like I'm also not careful enough, and I would probably end up like ripping out the wires at some point.
Deep dish or homing bumps?
Deep dish every day. Like the deeper the dish, the better.
Same with pizza.
It just feels so good. Yeah. Chicago.
All right. RGB lights, yes or no?
Yes, because they make you look cool.
And that's what it's all about. Do you lube your switches and stabilizers?
I'm a bad person. I haven't done that yet.
But I'm not a bad person.
I'm
You're a
scared to
terrible
take.
person.
I'm kind of scared, honestly, to take my switches apart. I feel like I'd never be able to get them back together.
Yeah, that's.
I'm also not very patient.
Yeah, I've done it once, and again, the patience on it. It's a lot of work. You believe me, the result is awesome. And again, if you see some of the boards later, you'll feel them and you'll be just like, okay, I get it. It feels great, but it is definitely work. But there are people on Reddit who have like lubing services where you can send them your switches, they'll do it all for you, and then you can get it back and have the effect without the work, which that's always fun.
That's what I'm about.
Yeah. And that being said, I don't think the oil versus grease versus blends will be helpful for.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you switch between layers? Is it just the function key?
Yeah, so you can program, you can permanently switch between layers, you can temporarily switch between layers. There's like a bunch of different ways to do it, and if you look at the firmware like details, that will usually tell you how to do it. I usually do temporary layer switches.
Yeah, so there's, you know how like caps lock, you hit the caps lock and things are capitalized? That's a layer. Wow, you've known about it this whole time.
Temporary keyboards aren't that bad.
Yeah. So you can do that where you just tap a function key that you program and that activates a layer, or you can have it held down. And so there are some very small keyboards that you'll see, and there's a few people here who own said keyboards where as they're typing, when you just tap a space, it makes a space. But if you hold down the space for 3 seconds, then it activates a layer and you can do a whole other thing. And so there's a lot of different ways to do that. Yeah. Cool. So we did the kind of those ones. What is the smallest board you've ever used, Isabella?
So I think it's probably my Plonk, but I've been kind of eyeing a Gherkin. I saw a Gherkin here last year where the case was just a piece of cardboard, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm kind of tempted to build one.
They're so small. I recently got an Alpha 28, which is literally 28 keys. So letters, a space, and a function key, and that's it. And I'm kind of afraid to even try to get deep into that one.
Yeah, maybe you can like hook it up to your phone and just use that.
That's true. Good point. Yeah. Flipped space. Do you do it?
Yeah, it depends on the board. It depends on how I feel.
For those
I think I have a flip space on my alt.
Yeah, for those who don't know what that means, a lot of people flip their space bars upside down because then it's angled towards you rather than like up towards the board, and then it's like more comfy on your thumbs in theory. I did it for a while, and then I was kind of just like, ooh, I think I am, but
I don't think I noticed too much of a difference on my thumbs, but I type a lot and my thumbs hurt anyway, so
yeah. So what does deep dish mean besides the pizza?
So if you imagine looking at a keycap from the side, how much it like curves in, like down, like the dish, and usually instead of having like the homing little like nub on the, what is it, F and J? I don't know how to type, right? You'll have like the deeper scoop on those keys. But there's also some profiles like the dev profile that are all deep dish, and it feels great, and I brought one of those.
Yeah. USB-C or not, bro?
It's the standard of the future, but it does make keyboards more expensive, and I understand why manufacturers don't include it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Zelios.
Yes, the Zelio Purples V2.
I'm a fan of my Xylants. Oh, Xylants are nice. But yeah, they're so expensive though. So really decide if you like them before you get them. Try them today because they're awesome switches. But man, whew, that price. Yeah. What's a noob thing to avoid when getting into mechanical keyboards?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to learn and a lot to keep in mind, and don't feel bad if like you have a billion questions, because that was me and that is me. I don't know. I think as long as like you're making educated choices about what you're buying, and like the community's super open, you can always ask anyone a question. Like, we won't laugh at you.
Yeah. One thing I would avoid is like, don't just buy keyboards to buy keyboards, as silly as that sounds. When I first got into it, like I had a few that I loved, and then I was just like, that's a good deal, and then I just started buying tons, and then it
Ask
was
Cassidy how many keyboards she has.
too many. So I'm slowly starting to sell all the boards that I just never used because I thought it'd just be cool to own them. And so I would say that that is a new thing to avoid. Really,
It's like slow but steady.
yeah, really focus on what you like, and like use this meetup, for example, as an educational experience to kind of figure out what sort of keys you actually want to use. If you're visiting Tokyo, what keyboard store would you
I feel
visit?
like that's a Cassidy question.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I went there. It was there's one in Akihabara, and honestly, I don't remember the name. I just went to an electronics store and I said HHKB, and then they pointed me in the right direction. It worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is all the advice I can give you. But they generally knew what I was talking about, so that worked. I did HHKB and just wiggled my fingers.
There's also a thread on the mechanical keyboard subreddit that kind of has like different stores for each country.
Yeah.
So those are pretty helpful.
Yeah.
We used that when we went to Singapore and Hong Kong.
Yeah, and I did that in Korea too. They just had lists of places that you could go to and say,
I
like,
knew
don't
that.
go into this store, but this one. And then it was in like a weird hallway, and then all of a sudden it was a wall of boards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fun. What are your favorite clickies, tactiles, and linears?
Clickies, 100%. And if I am feeling generous that day, I'll use tactiles.
Yeah, I am not a linears fan. I appreciate them. They're so smooth, but I'm a tactiles fan all the way myself.
I like making my presence known. So if people hear you coding, then like, you must be being really productive.
I saw one that went away. Are O-rings just a fad, or are they actually useful?
I've never personally used them. They're supposed to be good for like dampening sound,
Yeah. You've established that that's.
but I don't do that.
I do have a good friend where he just had a baby, but he loves his keyboards, and so he added O-rings to all of his boards, and he can like type while his baby's napping in the room. So that's something. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. And then how about last but not least, uniform profile or sculpted?
I'm a big fan of sculpted. I think like I have a few boards that are DSAs, which are pretty uniform, and they're nice. I don't know. I just have a soft spot in my heart for super sculpted.
Nice. Well, everyone, let's thank Isabella for her. So our next talk is going to be with Melissa from Signature Plastics. And I know a lot of people are very excited to chat with her, so come on down! Isabella has your microphone over here. Yeah, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey guys, Melissa.
I think you're working.
Great. Everyone can hear me? I am from Signature Plastics, also known as Pitney Keyboard. We are one in the same company. Pitney Keyboard is just our retail website that kind of spawned before this all became a big cool thing to do. So it's the kind of weird thing, but we love it. We're standing behind it, and I'm here to answer some questions. So
Cool. I stepped away, but now I'm back. Hello. So I've met you in person at other meetups, but we've mostly just chatted via email. And so I wanted to ask you first, just do you have a favorite keyboard? Do you just live in keyboards at home too?
I try not to live in keyboards at home because it is my job. I do it all day, but it's kind of unavoidable. I'm going to say that I use a Mac at home, and so I like the Mac keyboard, which I shouldn't really say because I don't like Mac keys.
Don't talk about that here.
No, at work I'm a 104 girl. I have to have the notepad. My job would get done effectively if I didn't. So I just use a regular Roswell keyboard.
Nice. And so in terms of the actual keyboard or key manufacturing process, could you go through what that looks like just from start to finish?
Sure, it's a little involved. I guess I have a little display up there if you guys really want to know. really, really basically, plastics keys start as raw material. They're really little tiny pellets. They go into a machine and it's heated up and then melted down and gets injected into the machine. The machine has a tool that clamps together, and each shape is its own tool. And so, like a 1-space key is different than a 1 1/4. A row 1 is different than a row 2. And so the material goes into the machine, clamps together, and heats up, then gets cool. The machine opens back up, and the part spits out. So that's the basics.
Yeah, that's awesome. And by the way, if you have any questions for Melissa about the manufacturing process, about my keyboard signature plastics, anything, feel free to use the exact same site as before. Because otherwise, I'm just going to ask my own questions that I'm very curious about. Oh wait, here, we have a question over here.
Raise our hand.
Sure.
So I'm really into GMK, but I would at the same time like to support this American company. Did Signature Plastics ever intend on expanding on their OEM and like maybe potentially their profile offerings?
For the stream, the question was, that's why we have it sent, because we have to repeat the questions, but it's cool. Does Signature Plastics intend on expanding on their current lineup for people who want to support American companies and
Yeah, absolutely. We're always wanting to expand our offerings, and it's a really long process for us. Unfortunately, as you guys have probably seen with our SAT tooling, that's taken exponentially longer than we wanted. But yeah, we're going to be bringing DCS back to popularity, I guess people are asking for that. But also working to kind of improve on the quality of that, because it is really similar to the Cherry Profile. I don't know that we'll go down the road where we make a key that's really similar to DCS. But we're always talking about what's new and what we can make.
So for key set designers, people who might approach you and say, hey, I have a design, I want to do it, what is your advice to them, pitfalls that they should avoid in the process as they're working with you or another manufacturer?
Well, I'd always say try to get as many people together to buy what you want as possible. It is expensive for us to mold keys. It takes one person to set up the machine to run a first shot. It takes another person to set up the machine to run the second shot. We have quality, we have shipping. There's all of these things involved. So my best advice is to get a bunch of people together to buy what you want. Second to that is just to kind of look and see what's popular. And if you're doing a big group buy, I'd take a look and see what kind of keyboards are really, really popular right now. Because a lot of our group buys kind of fall short of offering the right kind of keys, like the right split space bars. And that's not something that we always have knowledge of, what people are going to want in their set. So I would really get community involvement if you're designing something special like that.
So you mentioned there's all the different people in the process. I didn't realize that there would be a person for the single shot and the double shot and separate like that. So how does that work? How do double shots get made?
So it involves two machines. It's a two-stage process, obviously, because it's a two-shot process. We initially mold the legend part, which we call the first shot. It's really just basically a grid that's got the image on it that you want, or the text or whatever on it. That's set up, it's its own mold, goes in the machine, and then with that, after those are all run, we run all of those at one time, and those go over to the second shot machine, which is, so all of our first shots are run on what we call horizontal machines. And if you look out on our table, I've got my display of what a horizontal machine is. All of our the second shot stuff is run in what we call a vertical machine, so the machine is this way. And that allows us to kind of hand load things. A lot of our stuff is hand loaded. We aren't automated for everything, which is also another reason why these can get expensive. But and so then there's a person that sits at the machine and actually physically takes those off of the tool after the second shot is pulled around the first shot.
So cool. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. That's awesome. And so there's people asking, and I'm also curious. So with all of that different tooling and stuff, for different novelty keycaps, when people want to add their own fun designs and stuff to it, how does that process look to make the new tooling, and how that sounds kind of nuts that it has to be built for.
So that's actually an easier thing for us to make. We actually don't really call that tooling because it's confusing to the people on production floor. A tool to us is something that actually makes the shape, whereas the image, we call that a legend. Very basically, it's just a little piece of brass that's then inserted into the tool. And so we just do our back end kind of computer work into making sure that the design is moldable. There has to be minimum spacing, and then we have to put the right kind of curve on it, and then we cut all of those on a CNC machine.
Cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome. And so there's the different types of, there's ABS and PBT, and I'm sure there's other ones out there. What is the difference between them, and how does that affect the process?
Boy, that's a loaded question, you guys. So ABS, all of our tooling is designed for ABS, because back in the day there was a really big difference with industrial people, ABS versus PBT. I know that a lot of people really like PBT. For the wearability, we haven't really seen a ton of that on our end. We're actually done some testing where the actual wear life on ABS versus PBT isn't that different, but I know that it does feel a bit different. You can drop an ABS key and you can drop a PBT key, and they definitely sound different. From a molding standpoint, though, PBT has to melt at a lot hotter temperature. So when you stick that in a vertical machine, for us, when we run all of our keys that aren't designed with that kind of material in that heat, the PBT kind of tends to drool out of the machine, which is kind of a pain, which is generally why we don't run two-shot PBT, but it also tends to melt the first shot when we stick the first shot on there. So that's one of the reasons why we do sublimation with PBT, and we keep the ABS for the double shot.
Neat. That's so cool. And so I'm looking at some of the keys, the pictures over here. Can Signature Plastics do triple or quad shots for multicolored legends?
No. We used to be able to. That in itself is another kind of difficult process. We do it with one key in particular. You guys, I don't know if anybody has seen, we make a lens and then we can mold right below that text. But it is, if you actually move the key over, it's a split first shot. So one is clear and one is colored.
Neat. Man. So what is the most cost prohibitive aspect of a new unique key set?
New unique key set?
Yeah, like a designer comes and what's the most expensive part?
Probably going to be the legends, because unless there's a new shape, and that requires new tooling, which is expensive. But the legends just tend to add an extra cost, just because there is design work that goes into that on our end, and the tooling and the raw material and whatnot.
Neat. And so, if you don't mind my asking, this is like kind of that, but also I'm curious. What's kind of the history of Signature Plastics and Pimp My Keyboard and stuff? Like, how did Pimp My Keyboard become a thing, and like, how has the community affected the business side of things?
Yeah, so we started, I'll give you way back history. We started back in the 70s as a company called Comtech, and making some of the first keyboards with Cherry and with a company called Keytronics. The old owner of Comtech actually used to work at Keytronics, and then they split, and so we have kind of tooling that looks like Keytronics tooling, but isn't quite the same. But then back in 2001, we had a management buyout because Comtech kind of decided that keyboards weren't going to stick around, they weren't cool, people weren't going to do them, and they were trying to kind of phase the business out, where our owner, Bob, thought, I'm here, I see this, and it's not going away, and even in the industrial sector, people are still using keyboards, so he bought the Custer division. Comtech was originally a Canadian company, and so they had, in Surrey, they had a plant up there, and then they also had another division down there in Custer, which is why we're in the middle of nowhere, because it was convenient to the border. So management buyout, and then we kind of went through with the economy a downturn and wanted to get more sales, and we approached a local marketing company and said, hey, we have these keys that we sell. They actually weren't the MX compatible keys. They were just kind of novelty keys, flat keys that stick on top of a key. And we said, people are interested in these. How can we sell these? And they created us a very, very basic website. It was actually an old school, like an IBM kind of keyboard was our website. And you could click on the key and buy it. Yeah, it was awful. Awful website. Our website right now isn't great either, so I'll admit that. But we then saw the interest in this, with the group buys and with people just wanting more of what we offered from a commercial or a consumer standpoint as opposed to a commercial standpoint. And so we teamed up with a different marketing firm, and they were able to get us more in a retail kind of website, which still isn't great, I'm sorry guys, but
It works.
it kind of. And then, you know, it just kind of has evolved from there. The Pimp My Keyboard, you know, we wanted to be, our company name is Signature Plastics. SignaturePlastics.com is an extrusion company in Canada. So the name was already taken. The company that we hired was like, well, let's get creative. You guys can be solutions in plastic. And we thought, yeah, that's cool, until I have to tell my email address to people over the phone. And I have to spell the whole thing out. It takes 5 minutes. But then that wasn't really great for me, so that's where my keyboard kind of evolved.
It's nice. And now it's the fun site it is today. That's awesome. And so, because of all of this, what is a good strategy to catch these popular key sets that you're selling before they run out?
Us to make more. That's not it. It depends. I mean, is it stuff that through buys that are done, or is it stuff that we sell on our website? We try to kind of estimate demand, but we're really obviously terrible at that. You guys like what we don't carry, and you don't like what we carry.
We're just contrary people.
Yeah. We love all the input that we get, and I don't have a recommended strategy. Follow us on Facebook. That's where our marketing people like to announce things. Is Facebook and Instagram right now. So the newsletters kind of come out right when things are available, which I know isn't totally convenient, but things are usually posted a little bit faster on Facebook and Instagram.
Cool. And so that being said, are more essay keycap sets coming?
Yes. Yes. Our essay backlog, as you guys I'm sure, I don't know, is very big. But that being said, we are working on retro. I say retro, I don't know if anybody knows that, but I've been bugged over and over by some people for essay retro, so that's
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there any updates on the new profiles coming up?
Profiles.
Like the new just cap profiles, like DSS and all the.
So we're working with a designer with the DSS profiles. It's taking a little bit longer because we've run into some kind of tooling hitches, because it is old tooling that we bring back, and you know, when we test things out, you guys like row 3 for that bottom row, and it was not popular back in the day. So it's fine. It just kind of creates, when we start to run production, I just get people coming in. You know, we can run one sample, and hey, here, this is what we can make. Then when it goes into production, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, you can't actually run that with the volume that you want right now. We need to fix that tooling.
So yeah, keep an eye out. A new DSS set is coming soon.
We're reworking our G20 tooling as well.
Nice.
Like that. The original tooling was built for kind of mass production, and our sublimation for that was not great. What happens with sublimation, when you heat something up like that, it tends to warp the key and to make them bananas, and I know that's a really big complaint, so we're working to correct that.
The G20 profile is very cool. I'm sure someone will have a board with
We
it.
have one, I have a semiotic board out there. Yeah.
Check it out. It's a really fun shape. Yeah. The question is, how long does the tooling usually last before you need to retool?
So it depends on where the tool is made from. All of our SA tooling, that's all from the 70s and the 80s, so it's lasted this long. Typically, tools are supposed to last like 1 million shots. We found that they last much longer than that. The G20 tooling, though, is prototype tooling. We built that out of aluminum instead of steel, and so you know, the wear happens and damage, and people are careless.
So are there any colors that are typically harder to work with and in general match and deal with in general?
I would like to say no, but yes. So we work with a number of resin suppliers. We don't make the resin in-house. That all happens outside. You know, that's a totally separate process. And when I get something color matched, or when we get a resin, it needs to be opaque. It needs to be 100% so that you can't see through it at a minimum thickness. But when you get lighter colors like a yellow or a red or an orange, and then you try to hook a black first shot behind it, there's often bleeding that happens or see-through things that happen. So the lighter colors are often difficult. Bright colors seem to be difficult for our resin suppliers, and that's just because of all of the recent regulations, what you can actually put into resin when you make it. So.
Neat. So does changing the profiles of a key set change the cost, whether it be like a full uniform R3 or R1 through R4 or that sort of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's a row 1 key is a different tool than a row 2 key. So if you're getting a full sculptured board, you're talking probably 20 different shapes. Whereas if you're getting just an all row 3 key set or a DSA set, it's 10 or 11 shapes instead of the various rows.
Neat. How many people actually work at Signature Plastics and the other process? 32. That's a lot smaller than I thought I could actually. Wow, that's a lot of caps to manufacture. Man, cool. So going back to the caps, I was curious about that. So what profiles can you do ALPS compatibility with?
Right now we can do DCS ALPS, and then we can do blank DSA ALPS, just because we don't have the ability to sell blank right now. But we are working on that, so I think DCS would be your best bet.
Nice. There's actually a question about die subbing DSA next. Are there plans for any more of those?
ALPS,
Of DSA die sub keycaps.
just in general,
Yeah.
always. They love to sublimate. Our people love to sublimate on DSA keys. They're very easy, except for the warping. But again, we're working on that as well. But we're always looking. We're always kind of coming up with new stuff. Kind of thought we had saturated the market a little bit with the die sub DSA. So if you guys have any thoughts about that, then let me know.
I've never seen a tie-dye multicolored molded key. Is such a thing possible, or would the plastics blend too much?
It is possible if you catch the key at, catch the material right at the beginning. So material goes into a hopper, and then it is mixed into like the screw barrel. And at one point, it does all get blended because we buy color concentrate. So we put in a natural material with colored pellets, and then that's all blended at the machine. And so it's a fairly smooth process. We try not to do tie-dye, but it is possible.
So in that process, are there ever air bubbles that get in there, or is it so hot that that's not even
Too
good?
hot for that, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Question from someone, are front legends harder than top legends to put on caps?
They're not harder, that's just a totally separate process. The only way to get for us to get front legends is to patent them. So it's just a completely separate process. It's kind of archaic, in my opinion, how we do it, but they're, just a really simple ink transfer to the front of the key.
What is the quality control process like for once all the caps have been put together? Like what happens? Is it just a bunch of people saying, yeah, it looks good and throwing it? Or?
Well, so all of our keys are inspected as they come off the machine, for the most part. I know we are always, people are human, and so they're always missing something. We don't want people sleeping in the machines, but sometimes it feels like that. But so each key is inspected when it comes off. Then there's an additional inspection that happens with our quality control before things are passed on to shipping or our collating department.
What percentage would you say of caps go out or shipped and everything and are put aside for the grab bags?
Interesting. Maybe it should be about 3%.
Oh wow, okay.
Small percent.
Nice, that's a great
Yeah,
sample.
yeah.
Nice. I was afraid it was going to be like 10%
No,
or
and the
20.
grab bag keys are also startup keys. So
Oh, I
with
see.
the blending and with the cooling and starting up the machine, you start the machine, you don't want to give somebody the first shot that comes off of the tool just because it never looks as good as it can. So some of the grab bag keys are that as well.
Neat. Has there been a noticeable incline in the amount of custom keycaps Signature Plastics has produced in the last few years?
Yeah, we definitely saw a shift in the custom caps about 5 or 6 years ago. People found out what we did and found out that you could customize things, and it's expensive, but it's not crazy expensive. So yeah, we just definitely see an incline.
Nice. What is your personal favorite keycap set that you guys have made?
Personal favorite, probably I'm running Ocean Gulch right now on my keyboard.
Nice, good one.
Yeah, nice.
Nice. And then one last question. Do you have anything that we can buy from you today?
I was told that wasn't the thing that I was supposed to do, so no. But I do have freebie stuff for you guys. Maybe some left. I know a lot of people grabbed stuff before they started, but yeah, there was some stuff that I have over there. Nothing for sale, sorry.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. This concludes the talks. I do have a schedule of things if you want to stick around or if you want to stop hearing my voice. That's cool. Again, the people who are running this, we are Seekies. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. If you'd like to ever donate or volunteer or work with us in any way, you should check us out at seekeys.org. For the rest of the event, we're doing a quick lunch break, and we'll be back here at 1. And you can stay in the building if you want. We have to clear out this room because we're taking out this wall and putting tables everywhere. We do have a code of conduct for the event, and it's on our website at seekeys.org. If you ever want to report someone violating said code of conduct, look for someone with a pink, what is this called, lanyard thing, and you can talk to them, or if you'd like to do that anonymously, it's seekeys.org/events/report. seekeys.org/events/report. That's on the website. So anyway, check out that website. We'll be coming back here at 1, and then also we're going to be having a raffle with tons and tons of giveaways at a mysterious time in the afternoon that I need to find out what it is. But anyway, so stick around for that, and I think that's about all the information I need to give you. So go have lunch, and we'll see you soon.